John and Diane have been my closest and really my closest and most professional colleagues for 35 years, among many other things. I invited them to be with us this evening because their work is stunning, but the new book that has come out is like triple stunning. They are really going to take us on a visual journey like you have never been on through the life of this brilliant master, Frédéric Savie. I mean, what you're going to see, I don't think you've ever seen before. And the book is a combination of the images they took of Frédéric's work and his home and his atelier, and they have been put together with images that John and Diane either had taken and have them in their archives, on their nature walks, wherever it is. And Frédéric was alive to work with them on choosing some of those images, but it's a stunning book. And the unusual thing about the book is that there's text in the beginning and there's text at the end. It's a very, it was a chosen decision so that you could really get immersed in the visuals of the book. But I must say to you, the beginning, the opening text, they sent it to me sort of to give it a once over, which I was lying in bed reading it, and I was just blown away. And I said, oh my God, I have to send it to my friend. Can I send it? And she goes, sure, because it wasn't supposed to be for anyone else's eyes. Then I got to the back of the book, and there the text was so moving because it really tied everything up about his life, and they'll tell you about that. So what I do want to say to you is that John and Diane, and many have said about the 300 books, in 2010, they launched their own company called Kubaba. It was a name that they had taken many years ago. In fact, when I first met them, it was the license plate on their car, if I remember. And I was like, what? But they are now producing really lavish, beautiful, limited edition art books, applied art photography, you name it, they've done it, and you'll see some covers here. And the most recent one is Stardust. And I'm not kidding you when I say that Stardust, which is being published in Italy, could be winging over our heads right now because it has not yet hit the United States. So when you're buying it, it's a pre-order. So it should definitely be here within the next week or so. It should definitely be here as a gift because it really is a fabulous gift for any jewelry lover. So I'm going to stop talking. Kyle, you take over. I'll jump in again since it's a conversation.
All right. Well, Diane and John, this is a great experience for me because I, as a jewelry author and jewelry journalist, I've been reading, enjoying, collecting your books and drooling over your books for well over, 15 years. And now that you've created and photographed Stardust, the work and life of jeweler extraordinaire Frédéric Savie, I am super psyched to have you both take us away into this world of not only a man who was a globe-trotting gem collector, gem dealer, but then he became this master jewelry designer, a creative director. He helped the House of Fabergé revive itself. And so take it away, people.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for attending, and particularly Brandon and Debbie and Tuto, but especially you, Kyle, and Francie, you. It's a difficult time, as everybody knows, to launch a book. So we sort of consider this to be our Thanksgiving, thanks to you. And I don't want to diss the turkey because that's an important thing, but somehow this is our Thanksgiving and we really appreciate everything you've done. And now for a preview of Stardust.
So I wanted to say one thing that you brought up earlier, Francie, about refined jewelry, and it's meant to be worn and not put away. And years ago, we did a book on Elizabeth Taylor's jewelry collection. And we worked in her home for several weeks photographing the pieces. And it just turns out we realized that she wore her jewelry every day. She had her entire collection in her house. It didn't matter if she didn't get out of bed that day, she wore her jewelry.
Yes.
So don't ever stop wearing.
I'm gonna remember that, John.
Yes.
So I wanted to say also, this book has been 20 years in the making. So for us, it's a big deal. 20 years is a long time to work on a project. And so tonight is really special for us. And I want to thank you all too for, in these difficult times, letting us have this opportunity to launch it. On this slide, we have a picture of Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. And Jean-Baptiste Tavernier was the jewelry dealer to Louis XIV. And much like Frederic did 400 years later, he traveled across Asia. Frederic traveled across Africa, and he collected stones and he sold them to the wealthy people in the world, which were kings. Frederic always felt somehow connected to Jean-Baptiste and felt in a way he was his heir. On the left, you see 6 books. They're first editions of Jean-Baptiste Tavernier's voyages.
38 years of traveling.
And these were Frederic's first edition copies that he had in his collection.
And he memorized them, I think.
Pretty much. We can go to the next slide. So Frederic, where do I begin? 20 years ago, we got a phone call out of the blue. This man with a French accent said, "I would like you to make a book about me." I said, "Great. When do you want to begin?" He said, "Not for many years. I'm just beginning my career." I said, "Okay." He checked in with us over the next 6 years or so, 3 or 4 times a year by telephone.
And we had long conversations that, to the point where, literally some of the conversations were 2 or 3 hours.
But we became very good friends, and none of this was about jewelry. It just, somehow he knew us
before
he knew us. And he knew that we would do this someday with him. 6 years after that, we had a meeting at the Carlisle Hotel for the first time. And Frederic showed us maybe a dozen of his creations at that point. And we were blown away. We had never seen anything like this.
And remember, we saw everything that Richard Burton and Michael Todd had given to Elizabeth Taylor. And this was like...
So we started, we talked about the book that was going to be done someday, and we became very good friends and followed his career. In 2008, he was made the master jeweler for the newly reconstituted Fabergé and was able to open a new atelier off the Place Vendôme in Paris, which was pretty spectacular, as you'll see. Then in 2010, after a struggle with cancer that he thought he had under control, we got a phone call and he said, "We need to do the book now. We have to start right now. Please come to Paris. We're going to go from there to Spain, and he had the whole thing worked out." And so we did. And we started intensely shooting over that year. Part of the process was finding a philosophical writer for a philosophical jeweler. And we found that in Gilles Herzog. Gilles wrote the text in the beginning of the book, which is also translated into Chinese, by the way. So the text is English and Chinese concurrent. It was written in French. Frederic died in September of 2011. And then it took another 9 years for the book to finally come together with the help from his partner in Taiwan, Lisa Chen, and our designer, Lori Dolphin, and our publisher, Marco Jelinek. We could go to the next slide. We titled it Stardust because stardust is the origin of everything, including diamonds and ourselves. And Frederic was fascinated by this fact. After deciding on the title, several months later, we found this as Diane calls it, stellar quote.
Stellar.
Like star.
From a lecture by physicist Lawrence Krauss, and she'll read it.
Every atom in your body came from a star that exploded, and the atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand. It is really the most poetic thing I know about physics. We are all stardust.
So we thought that was pretty appropriate.
Actually, we cried.
I was going to say I cried.
We cried.
So the goal in this book was to bring Frederick to life through photography of his jewels, his environments, the designs in nature that were most of his inspiration. And luckily, we had a great archive of images of nature, which we could use to supplement the other material. We could go to the next slide. Now, this is in his apartment. Go to the next slide. And the next slide. Okay, the ring on the left is very special. It was one of his earliest pieces. It was even before he made that phone call to us. And he made it for his partner, Lisa Chen, to celebrate the birth of their son, Milan. And the story is he hid it under a cup. So when she picked up her cup at breakfast, the ring was there. We can go to the next slide.
So romantic.
I was going to say, what a presentation.
Yeah, he just lived his life in romanticism and mystery and magic.
And like a work of art.
Pardon me?
But he lived his life like a work of art.
Yes. And then solidified it in the physical.
I was going to say this later, but his life was intensely permeated with generosity. Yeah. And I don't know where that came from, but he was all about gifts, all about giving to other people.
And sharing everything all the time.
I mean, it was profound. I've never seen anything like that. He was a philosopher jeweler and somewhat of a modern shaman. He wandered the earth with extraordinary taste and generosity, but all of it was wrapped in a cloak of mystery.
Yeah.
You never really knew him. There was so much secretive in his life you can't believe.
Hmm.
So in this picture, Diane.
In this picture, we see his home. On the left is this incredibly large photograph that he had of Marilyn Monroe. You see reflected across the room. And on the right, the four images, and in the upper right-hand corner is this, what he called was a Cartier box, but he called it a magic box because it was beveled salmon-colored mirrors, as you see around the two complete end sections. And throughout many days and weeks and so forth and so on, whenever we would be sitting there, things and people and everything would be reflected in it. And I shot the lower left-hand portrait of him reflected inside that box.
We can go to the next slide.
John, I have a question though.
Yeah.
Later on, we see him holding a crystal, I believe.
That's
it.
Thank you, Francie. Is that the crystal that's there?
Yeah, that's it.
Unbelievable.
So we can go there. Okay, Kyle, you wanted to say something about this?
Oh, yeah. Well, I really admire how he obviously, he had studied at the Beaux-Arts in Paris, and he had studied applied art. So, this was a man who his knowledge of fine art and of applied art was beautifully transmuted into his jewelry designs. Like we've got this Art Deco chair and the colors, and then in this ring that's on the right, you see, there's some kind of similarity there. And then later on in the book, there's also the space ring, which is this beautiful Art Deco influenced, very heavily sculpted ring. But the thing is, he didn't just copy Art Deco. He took it to another height.
He transformed it.
Yeah, he took it
Yeah.
to a new
Yeah.
height in the jewels that he did. So, but that's all.
Okay, we can go on. So when we met in 2006, he had some pretty great pieces with him, but this was the masterpiece at that point. It's a cuff based on the Monet you see on your left, and it's made up of over 5,000 diamonds and opals.
And other stones.
And other stones.
Yeah.
It's just an extraordinary piece. If you go to the next slide, Frédéric, when he was dealing stones, I think he kept a lot for himself because he knew what he was going to be doing in the future. And he kept he sold big stones and kept small stones because he painted with stones. And he would do these magnificent gradations of sometimes, 7, 8, 9, 10 gradations of stones in a wash of color.
Like a band of yellow, instead of 3 tones, he would do 10 or 11 or 12 tones.
Yeah,
We
he
can
was
go to the
really into the gradient.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's painting. He's
Yeah.
painting.
I wanted to jump in and say that he was the son and grandson of diamond merchants.
right.
Yes.
And I think when you grow up around diamonds, you understand there are white colorless diamonds, champagne diamonds, yellow diamonds, beautiful brown cognac diamonds, chocolate diamonds. I mean, it's extraordinary. And I'm sure he kept all the best stones for himself.
And it took
I think
years
what's
to collect.
extraordinary, I'm going to jump in again. What's on the leather is really he's beginning to paint.
Yes.
Those gems, if you go back a slide,
Yeah.
those gems that are in the center by his tweezers and next to the wax for the bracelet,
Yeah.
they're not all in one plastic bag. They come from, I don't know how many stones are there, and he's laid them out and sort of already beginning to paint in his mind.
Yeah.
It's stunning, the process that goes on in there.
Yeah.
So the next slide shows a detail of the Nymphaeus bracelet. And you can get a sense of just this wild assemblage of stones. And you're also able here to see the articulation.
Do you see all the, follow the edges and you see
Yeah, the
where they
flexible
go.
links.
It's like a
It's the gold running through
puzzle. It's like
Yeah.
a puzzle.
Yeah, the entire bracelet flops. I mean, you can twist it, bend it forwards, backwards. It's just incredible. And this is the reverse. So it's just
And we know,
unlike
and,
anything I've ever seen.
and we know that Ray thinks this is like really one of the best parts of the bracelet. And I have a tendency to agree with you. I mean, not that I don't love the other side, but this, this just the first time I saw it, it took my breath away.
Frédéric always loved hiding beauty.
Yeah.
So he had this incredible ring that disappeared after he died. And it was just a plain gold band, a wedding band. But when he took it off, inside, it had
Emerald cut
spinels
hidden inside the band.
all the way around. And you couldn't even see how they were held together.
Nobody saw them. He felt them.
And nobody, it was just, he was the only one that knew they were there. We can go to the next slide.
That's an Indian tradition, I'd like to say, though. They call that the secret.
Yes. And it's not just Indian. It was actually in the pre-Columbian societies. I think it was in a lot of
That's
ancient
cool. I
societies.
didn't know that.
Well, I guess
The
it goes back
pre-Columbians
to
did
this.
that too, because the Indians were really hung up on that. They would put really valuable gems that no one would ever see except the wearer inside the ring.
Exactly. And they're also focused on the energies of the stones.
Totally. 'Cause
Not the stones as jewelry, right?
So then you want the stones on your skin, not pointing out.
Right.
Yes.
So this is a quote from Lorenzo's good friend, the painter Lorenzo's good friend, Frédéric's good friend, the painter Lorenzo Fernandez, who did this amazing portrait of him, which was unveiled when we were in Portugal, which isn't part of this presentation, but it's in the book.
It's in the book. It's in the text in the book, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the front text,
It's a whole
it's
thing.
there.
Yes,
So
the whole layout.
Lorenzo said that going into Frédéric's atelier was like entering a dimension when time had stopped in order to reveal to us the charm of the inaccessible.
And I want to go to work every day through those gates and then climb these stairs.
That's right.
So then we would go up the stairs, 2 levels, and that was the door to his atelier. Next slide. This was the room where the jewelers worked. He had 4 jewelers and
4 setters.
well, four setters in the back room where the blue painting is, 4 jewelers in the front room that we're looking at, and 1 wax maker who was in this room.
And also, this was a tradition, Kyle, right? Of the last 500 years of high French jewelry. Do you want to say something about that?
I mean, the thing that differentiates Frédéric from so many other jewelers is that he was making these extremely complex designs with unparalleled quality gemstones. Because he was a gem dealer, he had access to the very, very best. And moreover, the technical engineering, the feats of technical engineering in his jewelry were such that only a few master jewelers even had the skills to fabricate by hand these really challenging designs. So that's the difference between high jewelry and fine jewelry.
Yeah. Now we can look at the next slide. So here you go, Kyle.
Yeah, the Art Deco influence, but as Diane said, he transmuted it and transformed Art Deco into something that was actually a super sculptural, heavily multidimensional ring, where again, he's painting with the stones. And even if you look at the emeralds, there's gradient quality to the emeralds in that span of emerald, in that, what would you call it? A panel of emeralds.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's fantastically labor intensive, really super difficult, and highly collectible, therefore highly valuable museum quality work.
Yeah.
So moving on. So towards the end, he started a series of bracelets and rings called the ribbons that were based on or inspired by the wrappings of a Fabergé gift. When Fabergé gift was given, it was always wrapped very beautifully, and he thought that would make a great bracelet and a great ring. So that was the inspiration. The last picture, go back one. So this is, these are 3 of his guys, and they're conversing with him about the ribbon bracelet. He has the form of the ribbon bracelet in his hand, and they're discussing where it's going to go at this point. And there were often many meetings like this. It always reminded me of a cabinet meeting in the White House or something.
In a better White House.
We can go to the next slide. So on the left is just a little detail of a shop. But on the right are 3 images of the ribbons being made. And you can see how they're setting up for stones on either side of the ribbon, which is an incredible amount of work. The one exception here is the bottom right picture is a Golconda diamond that they're actually setting for a friend of his.
It's huge.
It's a great stone. Moving on. So there's a detail on the left and the final ribbon bracelet on the right. And you can see how the stones are on both sides of the ribbon and on the edges of the ribbon, and it grades from pink to white to yellow. I mean, it's just extraordinary. Next shot.
Love this. I love the next 2 shots, John.
Yeah.
You know that.
So this is just a preview of the book. So there are many shots like this in the book that aren't in this presentation, but they basically speak to Frédéric's sense of color and taste. And did he pick it up from the gems? How did this happen?
It's the colors that inspired him in his dress in these 4 images were often the colors that inspired his jewels and vice versa. And he kept mixing that all up. And that's, you can see where his inspiration comes and goes.
He was involved in everything. Everything affected what he did. We did a lot of photography around Paris. Paris affected his life a lot, affected his work. It so happened that the Ferris wheel at the Place de Concorde sets up nicely with this beautiful, beautiful opal bracelet, fire opal bracelet on the top, and the colored sapphire necklace on the bottom. Next slide. And while at the top of that Ferris wheel, Diane took the picture on the left.
Excuse me. My fantasy bracelet appeared. We're up on the top of the Ferris wheel, and there looking out, you see the red taillights of the cars moving out into the distance, and the diamond headlights coming at us with the Arc de Triomphe at the back. And I thought, oh my God, this is a bracelet. What a great bracelet with spinels or rubies or diamonds. And then the clasp becomes this little three-dimensional Arc de Triomphe. And we came down. The next night we went up with him and he said, yes, let's make this.
But
unfortunately,
he didn't live long enough.
Yeah. But that's what happens, not only for him, but for people who travel with him, are with him. I started seeing everything that I looked at as a piece of jewelry.
On the right is this beautiful ring called the cadeau, the present. It's a spinel.
His favorite stone.
With, I think, pink sapphires.
Pink sapphires and diamonds.
And diamonds. Next slide. Okay, so.
My territory, John.
Yes, okay.
I just have to say a couple things here. I mean, when I first saw the book and I saw this section of legend, I was rendered speechless because the cognac diamonds and the shape of the pieces really, and then you put this picture from a hike in Maine with it, which, as I understand, he was involved with choosing the picture.
Yeah, he loved it.
Collection. I was blown away. But the next page we're going to go to is even more. Well, that's the
after that. Oh, this is the detail of the bracelet, and that's a ring. But now the
next one is an image that Diane took.
Mm-hmm.
And Diane goes for all these dangerous places, and she was like hanging off the side. They were hiking somewhere. I don't know. And, you could see the ice and it's cold and whatever. And she just had to get that image. And what I found so incredible was look at the colors under the ice and the shape of the ice. And then the legend earring.
The fall leaves.
There couldn't have been a better match. I mean, and champagne diamonds are my favorite anyway. So to see them all together singing in these pieces, it was
wonderful. Those are obviously the earrings to the Legend series. Next.
Beautiful.
Okay. Francie, do you want to say anything here?
I do want to say something. We've got some questions about whether pieces are available. And while many of the pieces are one-of-a-kind pieces, this, for example, this Vagabond collection is still being made today. Lisa Chen is working with the very same master jewelers that Frederic worked with, and they are making these pieces today. So they can be commissioned. There are other pieces, which you don't have the whole book here. So if there's anything that you see that you're interested in, reach out to us in the store. You have Brandon's email, and if not, you'll have it soon. And then we will put you in touch with Lisa. So there are a lot of pieces that can be done today and commissioned today. So
I wanted to say something about here that, the red ring. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote that nature always wears the colors of the spirit. And in our whole experience with Frederick's spirit wore the colors of nature. So he was always going back and forth and talking about what this would look like in nature and how would that look like here. And this is how he actually processed in his thinking and in that whole, how he got to the end of the coloration for a piece was the colors of nature.
We can move on. So this is the Amazon series, which are basically slabs of pave diamonds. This is the one that we first saw in 2006. Since then, he did this in colored diamonds. So it's available both ways. Diane always thought that this close-up of it looked like a diamond Stonehenge.
Stonehenge. Okay.
We can go to the next.
I have something to say. I have something to say.
Okay.
This ring on the right is the ring that John commissioned for Diane's wedding ring. Now, what's so unusual about that is John and Diane had been together for 35 years, unmarried. And then one day I got a phone call and they said, well, can you meet us at City Hall? I'm like, what do you mean City Hall? And sure enough, there were, I don't know, a few of us, maybe 6 of us, and they got married, and they're going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary this year.
The winter solstice.
Yep.
And here's the ring.
You have to come right in with it. Yeah, it's beautiful. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh, congratulations. Beautiful.
So moving on. This is a charming little brooch that a client had ordered from Frederic after he had returned from Svalbard, where he was looking at polar bears.
Aww.
And Frederic arranged to have this made for him. We always thought it was very, very sweet. Next slide.
Okay, well, this is sort of an interesting, serious moment, but it's very critical because here on the right, Frederic is speaking with this gentleman who is in his atelier, except that he's not a jeweler. He is an interpreter. And there's a mental collaboration going on here between the two of them to realize Frederic's vision. And it's sort of it really is a sacred moment of initiating this process. And he's explaining to him what he sees. He's going to now take that information, do a drawing, and then further work on the engineering problems of how to actually incorporate that. But it's really, those 4 pictures are the moment between a vision and
its possibility.
Total but it's concretization.
And that's opposite a picture of the Seine that Frederic sent us out at one point, and he wanted us to take pictures of the Seine, which we did until we almost went insane. And this worked really well for this. Can we see the next slide? So this we just called a desk of creativity. It's just, they're trying to figure out things. They're using skate wings to see if that'll support gems, and they're taking Cuba textile designs and seeing if there's a pattern there that can work. And Diane came up with an interesting quote from...
I was reading an interview with Bruce Springsteen 2 days ago, where he's talking about creativity for his new album. And he talked about how an individual, but he's speaking really about artists, move through their life and they pick up intangible signals all the time. So they're jamming themselves with signals. And then the artist needs a way to disperse this energy, which manifests in their art.
So this is where that comes out. Can we see the next slide? Okay, so this again is the cover and the title page of the book, but on the right is the iris bracelet, which was his last great masterpiece. And it's basically gone beyond jewelry. As I said, it's almost too heavy to wear. One could. It's very expensive. It's an intense thing. It has over 12,000 diamonds in it. And just an incredible masterpiece. These are some process shots of it being put together.
Can I make a comment here, though, about this particular piece? This is such an important piece because it shows it really is, you know, it's fine art. The difference between fine art and applied art is that if you can't, it has no function. It's just this beautiful, incredible object that was created out of the love of design and materials. And so I just think it's a testament to Xavier's artistry.
It was. And frankly, he was going from here to sculpture. He was going to continue to make jewelry. He was going to continue to make jewelry, but he wanted to make sculptures. And the most grandiose of them, shortly before he died, he told me he was thinking about putting a large concave mirror encrusted with diamonds on the moon. And then he wanted a laser to be shot at this mirror and the world to be dazzled by the light that would come back from the moon. That's pretty grand.
Yeah.
It's a great concept.
But I have to say that that's actually, I mean, that's conceptual art because the true medium of conceptual art is telepathy.
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
understand.
You know, Elon Musk is going around now. We could get him to sponsor someone to do that.
Excellent idea.
Well, excellent idea. And somebody you know, Francie, had that idea. And I'll tell you about it later.
He'll tell me later.
Next slide. Okay, so we're getting to the end here.
It's the end. Sorry,
So we called this chapter Days of Grace. And Frederic asked a number of us, Gilles, the writer, Diane and myself, the people that painted his portrait, some family, his son. He asked us all to come to Comporta in Portugal. He rented Anselm Kiefer's compound, which is just unbelievable. And we stayed there for a week. And the main thing he wanted to do was he wanted to work on the book, but he wanted me to go out on the beach with him and photograph his favorite stones in the sunlight. And we spent an entire afternoon on the beach. He had that big crystal that you see there that was in his house earlier.
He had a spinel, he had a zavarite, and
he never really explained what it was. And I'm going to say something. I mean, I knew he wanted them shot in sunlight, but just this afternoon, when I was thinking about all this, I realized, but that's a star. So he's taking this stardust, which everything is, and he wanted it to be lit by a star.
That's what.
And all the photography we've ever done has been lit with artificial light in the studio. And he just had this idea that he wanted this to happen. We finished the shoot. You can go to the next slide. He was so spent, he could barely walk. I helped him back up the dune to the buggy to go back to the house. The next day, he flew to Paris for a final treatment, which didn't work, and he died in 2 weeks. And that was the end of Frederic at that point. And Diane.
Anyway,
you've brought him back through your book, and I don't say that lightly.
Pardon me?
You've brought him back through the book. For people who did not know him,
yeah,
I really think that, you know, especially when the whole book, you come away with the sense of someone who he was higher. He was a high person.
He was a high person.
He was
and his work was high jewelry.
That's hey.
But I want to say something.
He was a high person, and he made high jewelry. And I just have to say that because he and John and I were all caught up in, you know, the energy of consciousness conversation all the time. And, you know, I know that when Frederic slipped into the next room, which is what the deep meditators and the shamans and the physicists call it, the stars welcomed him home for real.
Bravo.
That's it.
Bravo.
Yeah,
so I'm really happy that we put the two of you together. I think it really was a perfect marriage. And I'm really glad that you were both available, that Kyle, you were available, that Michelle, you were available, that all our guests, I mean, we've never had as many guests stay in the viewing room as we have now. And so my job is to now step back. Am I supposed to say, wait, before I step back, I'll say it after Brandon.
I think Diane has a question.
It's not a question. It's a bit of a statement. I just want to thank my lifetime partner, John Taylor, for all of this.
Oh,
Because,
yes!
Yay!
Hooray!
because I can't tell you what a life because of him.
Oh,
Wow.
wow, John, where'd that come from?
I don't know.
I was just thinking about how did this all happen? Yes, all the
Years.
synchronicities, but thank you.
And thank Frederic for
Yeah,
this.
and guess what? He's here right now.
No,
He is-
Frederick, I had this theory. He's the cosmic glue that's holding us all together.
Thank you. Oh,
He would agree.
sister, you're on.
All right, but some of the comments are wonderful in terms of the incredible energy the water lilies cuff has. I'm just looking through the chat line.
Yeah, frankly, we've never had
Amazing
quite the
collaboration.
reaction.
Thank you, Frederick Zavi, someone wrote, for what you are. Rip.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
really?
So we've done it. We've really done it.
Thank
We've really
you.
done it. Again, thank you both. I really invite everyone to go shop on the site. Jewelry, the book, as I said, the book is a pre-order. We'll get it signed for you and out. Don't forget to put a message in. And anyone who purchases Ray's Jewelry, the store will be gifting you a book. And what am I forgetting? Anything, Brandon?
No, I think you've covered it all. The email has gone out, and we're all set for everyone to go shop and get their
I just
books.
want to thank Michelle again. I see her over there. She's still with us. Michelle, really, I had so much to say that was in my notes, but you know everything that I think. So thank you. And thank you everybody for staying with us for
Thanks,
this.
everyone.
Francie.
Thank you.
Ray, great.
Yes, thanks, folks. Thank you. It was a most enjoyable evening. Thank you very much.
Oh, great.
Now I'm going to go and have the glass of wine that I didn't have while I was sitting.
Yeah, I'm going to have my tequila, not to worry.
Francie, bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye, y'all.
Bye, bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye, bye.
Thank you, everyone.